Good morning and welcome to the show. It's great to be back with this week's episode of China Now, the only show dedicated to bringing China closer to you. My name is Makiza Latifa. Let's get started with China Current with Lisa, where we bring you weekly news reports of what's happening in China. She'll tell you about the China Arab State Cooperation Forum, which was opened in Beijing on May 30th, 2024. The East Asian Summit, which was held on May 26th, and then on technology, she will tell you about the Sino-U.S. tech war, which continues to unfold. Please stay with us for details of these stories and many others. Over to you, Lisa.
China Current is a weekly news talk show from China to the world. We cover viral news about China every week and also give you the newest updates on China's cutting-edge technologies. Let's get started.
Hello from Shanghai, this is Lisa. Welcome to another episode of China Currents, your weekly news report of what's trending in China. Let's start with the China Arab State Cooperation Forum, which was opened in Beijing on May 30th. At the invitation of President Xi Jinping, leaders from Bahrain, Egypt, Tunisia, and the UAE will pay state visit to China and attend the opening ceremony of the 10th Ministerial Conference of the China Arab State Cooperation Forum. Chinese state media called the forum a reflection of the solidarity and cooperation between China and Arab countries, underscoring the willingness of pushing China-Arab relations to the new stage. On the 30th, President Xi held talks with visiting Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, in which Xi emphasized the history of friendship between China and Egypt. He mentioned that Egypt was the first Arab and African state to establish diplomatic relations with China, and 2024 marks the 10th anniversary of the establishment of the China-Egypt Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. According to Chinese media, two of the most crucial topics for this forum would be the Palestine issue and further cooperation between China and Arabic states. Li Xingang, a Middle East researcher at Zhejiang University, believes that the four Arabic countries are either actively involved in pushing for a ceasefire in the current Israeli-Palestinian conflict or are somewhat involved in the crisis. The participation of the leaders of these four countries at the Beijing-held conference, on the one hand, reflects the importance that these countries attach to promoting cooperation with China. On the other hand, this shows that the leaders intend to take this opportunity to discuss a political settlement of the Palestinian-Israeli issue with China. The common stance to support the just cause of the Palestinian people, shared by China and Arab countries, has always been a significant element in Arab-China cooperation. Next up, the East Asian Summit. On May 26, Chinese Premier Li Qiang arrived in Seoul to attend the 9th Trilateral Summit meeting among China, Japan, and South Korea. Li had a meeting with South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida on the day of his arrival, with Chinese experts from the state media saying the three major economies in East Asia will make pragmatic efforts to make sure the economic development and integration of the region will not be affected by bloc confrontation and geopolitical crisis. Analysis from China indicates that the three countries are currently facing different challenges due to the disruption of the global supply chain and other impacts. So they all have a sincere motivation and realistic desire to resume the trilateral mechanism at this point, as they want to seek cooperation with each other and prevent potential instability by boosting senior-level communication between the governments. Premier Li Qiang was not the only Chinese official who met with Japanese Prime Minister this week. On May 29, Liu Jianchao, head of the International Department of the Communist Party of China, met with Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida in Tokyo. In his meeting with the Japanese Prime Minister, Liu mainly focused on the issue of Taiwan, stating that Japan should adhere to the One China principle, effectively safeguard the political foundation of the ties. Maintaining stability of the Taiwan Strait is in the common interest of both China and Japan. Liu's remarks come after Japan's recent reckless reaction towards Taiwan's newly inaugurated leader Lai Ching-te. Previously, on May 23rd, Chinese Foreign Ministry slammed Japan, warning the Japanese side not to convene at or support Taiwan independent separatist forces in any form. Speaking of turbulence in the sea, on May 29, state media revealed that China is preparing to build more Type O55 destroyers, which is a class of stealth-guided missile destroyer mainly used as its primary escort for Chinese aircraft carriers. State media stated that the building project reflects the Chinese People's Liberation Army Navy's strides towards the blue water and efforts in safeguarding national sovereignty, security, and development interests, as well as peace and stability in the world. According to Shipborne Weapon magazine, a major non-official Chinese military magazine, the Type O55 is considered the world's best destroyer in terms of comprehensive capabilities, and adding more Type O55 can give the PLA more tactical flexibility. The PLA Navy has been a provider of international security goods since last decade, including its regular export mission in the Gulf of Aden and waters of Somalia, as well as humanitarian aid and disaster relief missions when needed. Next up, still on Taiwan, on May 27th, the 77th WHA, which kicked off in Geneva, Switzerland, refused to include a proposal of the so-called invitation to Taiwan to participate in the WHA as an observer. Chinese Foreign Ministry said WHA's action fully demonstrates the One China principle is where global opinion trends and the arc of history bends, and must not be challenged. The ministry indicated that once again we would like to make it clear to the DPP authorities that the abiding commitment of the international community to the One China principle is unshakable, and the trend that China will be reunified is not to be reversed. Taiwan's independence runs contrary to the interest of our compatriots in Taiwan, and any attempt to seek Taiwan independence by relying on external forces leads nowhere. The One China principle is a prerequisite for Taiwan's participation in the activities of international organizations, including the WHA, and this is a fundamental principle reaffirmed in the UNGA Resolution 2758 and WHA's Resolution 25.1, said Chen Xu, permanent representative of China to the UN office in Geneva. Next up, Huawei, the Chinese tech giant's patent has just revealed its 3nm class process technology plans. According to tech news website Tom's Hardware, when Huawei and Semiconductor Manufacturing International Co. (SMIC) patented self-aligned quadruple patterning (SAQP) lithography methods to produce advanced microchip earlier this year, most assumed the companies were working on building chips using their 5nm class fabrication process. Apparently, that's not the limit of their plans, as Huawei is now looking forward to using quadruple patterning for 3nm class manufacturing technology as well. Next up, as the Sino-U.S. tech war unfolds, the U.S. is considering measures to regulate the export of open-source large language models as part of a broader effort to safeguard American AI technology from being accessed by countries like China and Russia. The proposed bill, known as the Enhanced National Framework for Overseas Restrictions of Critical Export Act, aims to grant the White House the authority to restrict the export of AI models deemed a national security threat to China. How would such a ban on open-source LLMs export affect China's AI development? Or is it the US politicians being dramatic? To answer this, we need to first take a closer look at Chinese LLMs. AI experts in Silicon Valley are well aware of what their Chinese colleagues have been working on. In a post on X, head of research at Stability AI observed that many of the most competitive open-source large models, including Q&E, Internal, DeepSeek, BGE, Cog, VLM, and other models, are actually from China. And he goes further and concludes that the narrative that China is behind on AI is simply not true. Mr. Abraham is definitely not alone in expressing the enthusiasm surrounding the remarkable performance of Chinese LLMs. Another exposed liquid AI senior scientist from machine learning, Maxime Lebon, weighs in and shares his excitement on the high score of Q1 1.5 to 110B of Alibaba. In April of this year, the Chinese tech giant released the first trillion parameter level model in Q1 1.5 to 110B mentioned above. This model can effectively process content lengths of up to 32K tokens and supports multiple languages including English, Chinese, French, Spanish, and German. Building on the transformer architecture, it incorporates an efficient group query attention mechanism. The model's foundational capabilities are on a par with those of top-notch Western LLMs, exhibiting outstanding performance in chat-based evolution scenarios such as MT-Bench and Alpaca Evo 2.0. It's no wonder the Q1 1.5 to 110B has claimed the top seat in Hugging Face league table for open-source LLMs. On the high potential of the Q1 model, Bindu Reddy, the founder and CEO of Alpacas.ai, utters the rallying call for it to join the open-source revolution that would break the monopoly of big capital. The rise of Chinese LLMs doesn't stop at Q1. DeepSeek V2, nicknamed as LLM's TMU for its surprisingly low cost, has surpassed GPT-4 and claimed a top 3 spot in the Linebench ranking. The Linebench ranking project focused on benchmarking the alignment of LLMs in Chinese. DeepSeek V2, while closely rivaling the capability of leading closed-source models, has significantly reduced its API pricing to $1 for every million tokens input and $2 for output. This pricing is only 1/7 of Llama 370B and approximately 1/100 of GPT-4 Turbo, making it an exceptional value proposition. Despite its affordability, DeepSeek still managed to turn a profit, achieving a peak throughput of 50,000 tokens per second on machines equipped with 8 H800 GPUs. With the output API pricing considered, each node generates an income of $50.4 per hour. Taking into account the cost of the 8 H800 nodes in China stays at around $15 per hour, DeepSeek servers can yield a remarkable profit of $35.4 per hour, resulting in a gross profit margin exceeding 70%. These notable features, including efficiency, usability, and groundbreaking pricing, address the urgent need of the open-source community. These advancements have gained significant attention from SemiAnalysis, a reputable semiconductor research and consulting company. In an extensive article published on May 7th, SemiAnalysis specifically highlighted DeepSeek V2 as the phoenix from the east, praising its exceptional cost-effectiveness and its dominance over other models from an economic standpoint. The article also suggested that industry challenges for OpenAI and Microsoft may extend beyond the United States. While some Chinese models like DeepSeek prioritize the supremacy of computational power focused on economic efficiency, others like Q1 adopts a comprehensive approach, expanding the repertoire of model sizes. However, the majority of companies adhere to the scaling law, fervently pursuing large parameter sizes. In contrast, ModelBest Inc., a Chinese startup, takes a divergent route by striving to minimize parameters. Their aim is to maximize model efficiency with lower deployment thresholds and reduce usage costs, accomplishing more with less. On February the 1st of this year, ModelBest unveiled the Mini CP M2B model, consisting of a mere 2.4 billion parameters. Not only does it outperform models in its class, such as Google's Gemma 2B, but it also surpassed benchmark models like Mistral 7B in performance, and even outshine larger parameter models like Llama 2 13B and Llama 2 70B chat in certain aspects. Only 70 days later, the company is on the move again to reveal the Mini CPM Llama 3 VE 2.5 multi-model model, which represents a significant leap in performance, showcasing unprecedented achievements. Following its open source release in the international community, Thomas Wolf, the co-founder of Hugging Face, promptly acknowledged this development in a post, remarking, "China has presented a series of astounding technical reports and open source models such as DeepSeek, Mini-CPM, Ultra Feedback, etc. The data and experimental results are openly shared, a level of transparent knowledge sharing that has been missing in recent Western tech model releases." The smaller parameter size of models like Mini-CPM brings forth numerous advantages. Firstly, it allows China to overcome the challenge of a relative shortage of advanced AI chips. Secondly, these compact models can be deployed in devices and robots operating in remote areas with limited or no internet access. Presently, most devices powered by large language models require a consistent connection to access LLMs deployed on the cloud through APIs. However, with models like Mini-CPM, robots operating in jungles or underwater environments can rely on their inbuilt LLMs independent of external connectivity. This breakthrough opens up new possibilities for deploying AI capabilities in challenging and resource-constrained settings. Furthermore, the case of Mini-CPM Llama 3 v2.5 provides a valuable lesson on the significance of international cooperation. As implied by its name, the model is built upon the open-source Llama 3 from Meta, serving as its foundational model. While the open-source environment strives to narrow the technology gap between nations and social classes, there are those who seek to widen it. Rainer Kostler, one of the early investors in OpenAI, has raised concern about sharing LLMs with China. However, no one has responded to this concern better than the AI luminary Yan LeCun. AI is not a weapon. This statement by Yan LeCun emphasizes the importance of viewing AI as a tool for progress and collaboration rather than a means to create divisions or conflicts. It highlights the need for responsible and inclusive development and deployment of AI technologies, with international cooperation playing a vital role in ensuring ethical and beneficial outcomes for all. The case of Mini-CPM Llama 3 v2.5 demonstrates the positive outcome that can arise from global collaboration and the open exchange of knowledge and resources in pursuit of advancing AI for the betterment of society. And that is all for today. Thank you for watching this episode of China Current. If you have any thoughts and comments about our show, please reach us at the email address below. And Lisa, look forward to hearing from you. And see you next time.
Well, it looks like now more than ever, artificial intelligence has become a part of our world. Thanks, Lisa, for the updates. Next on the show is the Thinkers Forum. And just as the name suggests, we will hear from our thinkers and scholars on issues of great importance. For the first part of the segment, the team engaged a member of the Advisory Council at the Center of Geoeconomics for the Global South, Mr. Atul Aneja, on what he thinks of the US President Joe Biden's accusation that India, China, Japan, and Russia are xenophobic countries. And here's what he had to say.
It was rejected, in fact, in India because we do not agree to the formulation that India is a xenophobic country. We are civilizationally not xenophobic, and we are welcoming all cultures, all pluralistic ideas, and we have a culture of debate and acceptance. So that's absolutely off the mark. But I think the point is deeper, because I think what the Americans' worldview is that of a unipolar world, that they are at the center of the universe, right? And this was reinforced after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 and intellectualized by Fukuyama's idea, end of history, that this is the end. The Western world has triumphed and the unipolar world has begun. That era has begun permanently. Now, that's the mindset from which they come. What has happened in between is that the world has become from unipolar to multipolar. You have new civilizational states which are on the rise. China its rise is visible, both in terms of geoeconomic power and geopolitical heft. It can be seen. You have a rising Russia, a civilization state, and India is on the rise. And we are the fastest growing economy in the world. So power has diffused, but the Americans and the West generally are unable to reconcile with new realities. So in order to force their worldview, they see India, in this case, Japan, and one more, Russia, probably, as the other. You have to other it because you have not moved from your flawed, unrealistic position that the world is unipolar and America is the center of it. So I think it's a mismatch into your own bubble in which you live and the ground realities, which are dramatically opposite to what you think. I think that's a root cause, the end of history idea, and the permanence of US hegemony, which is behind such statements. Obviously, India rejects the statement. I'm sure Russia and Japan reject it too. We reject it, but we also not only reject that statement, but we reject that mentality, that way of thinking, that you are the hegemonistic power, which gives no space for other. I think they cannot accept India following an independent course of its own. What the Americans want is they want camp followers. They're the leader of the camp and others follow. And that's where the whole Atlantic Alliance is built upon. And if you have countries like Japan, like the European Union, I mean, they all fall in line. Whereas in India's case, we respect the Americans, we respect other cultures, but we have a personality of our own. And we have a certain role and a worldview which does not coincide exactly with the way Americans do. So the problem is that they will not accept us as equal partners. And that has been the reason, especially after G20 summit, where India managed to hold its own and did not take a position against Russia, for example, on the Ukraine issue, which the Americans were pressurizing us. We were the ones who were buying Russian oil, and in that way strengthening the Russian economy. And that's only increasing. Despite all the pressures, we have demonstrated more recently that we pursue the concept of our own strategic autonomy and our own role in the future as a civilizational state. And we see that's what's happening. And it has been demonstrated in various ways. Canada is one country which really went after, accusing us of carrying out extrajudicial killings in Canada of Sikh separatists, which are wanting a separate state, a separate country. And the Americans have followed. In fact, you have the Five Eyes, which is the intelligence grouping of white Anglo-Saxon world. I think they have all just come together now against us. And what happened with Canada was reflected soon with the so-called US demand for an investigation of another plot to kill a Sikh separatist. So that's where it is. You can see that post G20, there are definite examples now of hostility, let's say, of unease and pressurization of India by the Americans. Because frankly, now they realize that, as the fifth largest economy in the world with a growth rate of about 8%, that we are coming into our own with an independent mindset in the global system. And therefore, we will not be a camp follower, though we may collaborate with the Americans and the Japanese, the Australians on supply chains, vaccine development, all non-military areas. But we are not going to be part of a military pact which is geared to contain China. I think they've all realized that, and therefore have come to this conclusion that India is not a part of their camp and has bolted away from that. And that is being reflected since the World Economic Forum of 2020, where Modi was attacked by George Soros in that forum. I think the rest of the team has followed it up, and now the hostility has peaked after the G20 summit. Let me be realistic. There is a very strong pro-US lobbies working inside India. There is no doubt about it, which want a relationship which is completely tilted towards the United States. Then there are voices of balance that we need to engage with both. So we have people who are not happy with this, in the important commercial relations between India and China going to such levels. And I am under no illusions that people of goodwill on both sides will have to come together, because there is a fight ahead to look at things logically and in a national interest and not in an ideological, hostile way. I mean, there are people who get carried away that we are democracies, etc., so we are natural partners. Indian democracy predates Western democracy. It's very different from what they have. And now you see interference in Indian elections coming because we realize that our way of thinking and our lifestyles are different from theirs. And there is a need for more space, for more cultures to come in. The West doesn't like it. There are people who will not receive this news well and will try and scuttle things. China has the two centenary goals. One it was 2021, other is 2049. Similarly, we have a goal of 2047 as the benchmark where India becomes a developed country. So this is the vision of this government. If we see the logic and tide of history, I think we are on the right side of history. And I know there are huge obstacles ahead and difficulties, but there is, personally, I sense an optimism in the rise of Asia, the rise of Eurasia. And that's where we will have to be. We have no option but to be together and take this journey, a very, very post-West journey as partners. We must learn to collaborate and make our own rules. The West always talks about rule-based system. Well, of course, we agree rule-based system, but then who makes the rules? And that's important. I'm not saying that we reverse and we dominate the rest of the world, but a fair world which is genuinely rule-based, then the rules come from our traditions and our interests. I think there are going to be various poles in the world, various civilizations coming together, and we need to forge these two rules for its peaceful coexistence and prosperity. And in defining those rules, I think India and China are going to be playing a critical role.
Now we move on to the next phase of this segment, where we focus on the just ended South African elections held on May 29th. This election, according to many, is South Africa's most closely fought election since the African National Congress, ANC, came to power 30 years ago. We are honored to have Busani Ngcaweni, who is the Director General of the National School of Government in South Africa, and also a visiting fellow at the China Institute, Fudan University.
South Africa is 30 years old this year. Our democracy we got in 1994.
Free at last.
We first voted on the 27th of April. President Mandela was inaugurated on the 10th of May. So this moment now is an important moment of 3 decades of democracy. South Africa is a great country. I say this having lived there. I say this having traveled around the world. I've been to about 60 countries around the world. And my being in these 60 countries around the world affirms this view that South Africa is a great country, not just because of its natural splendor and beauty, but also because of the human spirit that characterizes South Africa. And so necessarily there are some important questions that we are asking ourselves as ordinary South Africans, but of course even government, private sector, and others, which says, what is it of the experience of 30 years can be used as a building block for the next decade, which means up to 40 years, 50 and beyond? What lessons have we learned? Lessons such as low growth of the manufacturing sector, lessons such as having minerals still dominating our export basket. In fact, they are top 5. You see the primary sectors still dominate. Lessons such as our experimentation with state building and its outcomes. We've got very robust institutions. Some of them are fragile. They've gone through some challenges, but they have regrouped. How then do we use all of these experiences, including dealing with, the discontents from pandemics, the discontents from the global economic downturn, which has an effect on the real economy, because after the 2008 downturn, we lost jobs in the real economy because our economy is interconnected. After the pandemic, 2020, we also lost jobs in the real economy. So we're taking stock of all of those to say, how do we build shock absorbers as South African society so that when the next pandemic comes, it doesn't affect us as much as the last one, so that when the next big global economic crisis comes, that we are able to shield the economy and to shield the people of South Africa from those type of shocks. And so that is the challenge between us. What brings dynamism and excitement is in elections in South Africa, especially after 2004, is that we have new generations that are voting. Also, at every election, we have new and more political parties that are entering the fray. That is what is new. But 1994, of course, was big. And then, the subsequent, elections, 99, and then 2004, we began to see an expansion of the number of people who are contesting elections. And that's in the last election, and in the last election, we had the so-called born free. These are people who were born in 94, who had no history of apartheid, entering the fray. And that's what then gives momentum. And now, of course, those people who are born free are voting for this. They are voting again, and there's new political parties that have emerged. And there's always been many people who tried their luck. At the end of the day, you would not have more than, we say 10, 11 parties represented in parliament, even if 40 of them were contesting. At the voting stations, people narrowed down the list. Myself, I'm voting, here in Shanghai at the consulate, and I'm sure there's other South Africans who will be voting. People are excited about it. Of course, sometimes people will be affected by, other national issues, especially the economy. When the economy does well, sometimes people come out because they're excited. But also, sometimes when the economy does well, people stay at home and they don't go to vote because they think things are okay. So these things are cyclical. But they are a sign that South Africa's democracy is vibrant, is lively, is very much stable as it were. We disagree as an open democracy on many things, but we agree on the fundamental issues around the national development and what needs to be done. I don't think people will interfere with our elections. South Africans are very conscious about that choices and decisions, and I don't think there will be external forces that can sway people to vote in a manner in which they didn't want to vote. And our election is very credible. You vote here at the station. There are political party agents here at the station. Counting and verification is done with party agents here observing. Once all of them are satisfied, they are signed, then they are uploaded onto the platform. So there is not even a remote chance that you can talk about vote rigging, because all party agents sit there at the voting station until the results are sent through to the results center. And there's more young people who are trying their chance, even as independent candidates. Of course, we will know within 7 days after the 29th of May whether or not the voters will affirm them. But there is a trend in South Africa. The trend is that people tend to trust political parties or institutions because they see that people belong. Sometimes people are suspicious of people who may not have the history of belonging somewhere because they have no track record. They are unsure what those people represent. So that is what this election is about. I have read all manifestos of all political parties. I do it without fail. I read these manifestos and I look at what is common amongst these manifestos, and I look at points of divergence. In the majority of cases, people agree. Where they differ is on the how-to and the extent and maybe the priorities. But substantively, everybody in these manifestos, they're talking about improving the quality of education, they're talking about increasing manufacturing capacity, increasing agricultural output, increasing export, reinvesting in infrastructure, addressing issues of, gender-based violence. And they are also talking about international solidarity, where South Africa continues to play an active role in building of an order characterized by equity and justice. And geopolitically, Nelson Mandela in 1994 said, South Africa will not be the skunk of the world again. He said that because South Africa had gone through a period of isolation because of apartheid. And there was a big international solidarity movement that ended up with the isolation of South Africa, sanctions, boycotts and so on. And all of those were important. Now, going forward, the big issues for us is how do we remain on this path that we are in now? We become a positive player in global affairs. We have seen the work that we are doing in Palestine. We have a moral obligation to do work like that, and we are happy that many countries in the global south are supportive of the actions of our state president, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa. The president has been very clear that President Mandela said South Africa's contribution to the world, that we must give the world a human face. And so that is why our president is busy doing what he's doing with regards to Gaza and so on. In fact, President Mandela said South Africa's freedom is incomplete until Palestine is free. So we're almost bound to continue doing the work of supporting this Palestinian people until they gain their freedom. So going forward, South Africa will continue to play a crucial role in BRICS. Our president is very clear about the role of BRICS. Will continue to play a crucial role at other multilateral fora such as the United Nations. Our President Ramaphosa, is very clear about the need to transform the global multilateral system and that it must serve the agenda of building a community of people and countries and societies that live peacefully in a rules-based global order. And that's what has been preoccupying. There is no party in South Africa contesting elections that says South Africa must not have a relationship with China. There isn't. Now, let's say there was, right? Here is the reality. There is no political party that can say, let's stop a relationship with a country that is our largest trading partner. There is no country that can do that. South Africa certainly cannot do that. I mean, the U.S., okay, is putting trade barriers, but the U.S. can't say we'll sever all economic ties because the amount of integration of these economies is greater than what politicians say at the end of the day. So we talk to business people. Here in China, a few weeks ago, there was an auto show in Beijing. We saw global CEOs who manages these big global automotive car companies who were there speaking. And all of them understand, and they were saying it there, that from a trade point of view, the world is much more interconnected than what politicians may be saying, because there are markets and there are places where people are producing, and these products are moving using very sophisticated, global value and supply chains, such that you could be here and eating, enjoying, a meal which has avocado. That avocado could be made in or farmed in a province in South Africa, or it could be in Zambia or anywhere else in the world. So I think the relations will continue to grow. We need to much more people-to-people contact, building understanding and bonds amongst ordinary people other than politicians. The BRICS platform is important, the Asian platform is important, and there are many other platforms that exist in the global south for people to engage.
And that was a very interesting analysis of the just ended elections and the nature of South African politics in its entirety. I hope you enjoyed it. But all too soon, we've come to the end of today's edition of China Now. I hope that through this show, you are gradually getting to see a different world, a different culture, and a different way of thinking. Let China not be far away from you anymore. If you have any comments and suggestions for the coming episodes of the show, please share it with us through the email provided below. I'm Makiza Latifa, and I'll see you same time next week.